Good morning, everybody. It is 9 o'clock, and thank you for being here on time. We are going to go ahead and get started. One thing I want you to know is that I know most classes have been going about 45 minutes. This one may run a little bit longer than that, but never fear. I've already coordinated with Marilyn Boismer, who is teaching the next class, and we'll make sure that you still have a break between the two classes and get done in time for your final class this morning. So thanks again for being here. Really happy to see all of you. And let's get started with a word of prayer this morning. Please bow your heads with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for all that you've done for us. Thank you for this time when all of us as Pathfinder and Master Guide staff can come together to focus on how to make this coming year a successful one for our kids. Please be with us and help us to be open to your ideas. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Okay, so good morning again. I'm really happy to be with you all today. So we have a lot of information to cover, but I'm going to start with just a quick introduction. A lot of you guys know me, but for those that don't, my name is Nadine Lashier, and I spent several years as one of the area coordinators here in Houston Bay. And this year, I am no longer in the area, but I am now the director of my local church, Pathfinder Club. And so I've actually been dealing with a lot of these questions myself. How are we going to run this club in the virtual environment? So we're going to go ahead and get started. One thing I will tell you, I don't have the chat open on my computer, but Marilyn is here with me, and she's going to monitor the chat room and answer questions for me there. And there will be time for questions at the end as well. All right, let's just dive in and get started. If I can get my there we go. Okay, so before we really start diving into the keys of organizing your club, there's some things that I want to make sure that we just realize up front. Let's just accept the fact this year is going to be different, and that's okay, right? There's things that are way beyond our control. We're going to accept it, embrace it, and let's use this as an opportunity to try new things. Maybe there's something you've always wanted to try to do. Now's your chance to do it. Okay. It's also easy to get overwhelmed when there's a lot going on. One of the ways I find that works for me is if you take a step back, focus on the foundations of Pathfinders. Why are we doing this? That really helps put things more into perspective and helps me make decisions on what's really important to focus on. Now, I think I was watching all the leadership training classes yesterday, and there's an awful lot of great information, and I know there's more good information coming today. So what we hope is that this gives you ideas. However, you know your club. You are the one who knows your church, your kids, your Pathfinders. So do what works best for you. Take these ideas, make them your own. It's okay if you see an idea, but you just don't think it's going to work at your church. That's okay. Find something that does. And then we also want to encourage you to continue networking. I know it's a lot harder in the virtual environment, but it is still possible. I know the area coordinators are looking for ways to help directors get together to share ideas, but also don't be afraid to share your ideas with other people. You may think, oh, I'm new at this, I don't know how to do this, but you never know what kind of ideas you may come up with that other people don't have. Okay, so that was setting the stage. So let's get into some more details. Organizing your club. Okay, this year, even though the circumstances are different, you still need to do the same type of preparation and organization work that you would do for a quote unquote normal year. You need to recruit, train your staff, decide what you want to accomplish, coordinate with the other ministries, build a calendar, and have a plan that helps you accomplish all of those things. Now, if you are a new director who doesn't know how to do those things, talk to your area coordinators and they can provide you some additional information. For the rest of this class, we're going to assume that you have done at least those basics before in the in-person environment. So we're going to focus on what's different about being in the virtual world. So how do I plan for a virtual club? Let's talk about recruiting your staff. What kind of things do you need to think about in this environment? First of all, and I heard this come up a couple times yesterday, how many staff do you need? Well, the short answer is you need enough to monitor each breakout room or to meet with each group if you're doing multiple activities. Remember that we shouldn't leave our kids unsupervised, but we also don't want more adults than kids. But for things like breakout rooms, it's impossible for one person to keep track of everything that's going on. So you need one staff member at each of those events just to keep an eye on what's going on. Okay, you want to make sure that your staff have the technology they need to support virtual meetings. It's great if you have people that want to volunteer, but if they don't have solid internet, if they don't have a device, it's going to be a struggle. So find people that can do that, or find a way to help meet those needs for them. You also this year are really going to want to look for someone who has sufficient time and knowledge that can provide technical support to you and your staff and your Pathfinders. This is somebody who knows Zoom, who has experience in Zoom, who knows some basics of internet troubleshooting, some of those kind of things, so that, because we know there's going to be issues, right? Let's face it. We've watched online school, we've watched online church services. We know there are going to be technical issues. So try to find yourself someone who can deal with that for you. Now, it's fine if that's one of your existing staff members, that's great. But maybe there's also someone in your church who doesn't really want to work with the kids as a staff member, but maybe they have some technical knowledge and they could just provide you support that way. So think a little bit outside the box. And then the last thing I do want to make sure that is pointed out, even in the virtual world, all staff must still be cleared by the verified volunteers, NCS risk, all of those background check processes. So even if you're only meeting virtually, you still need to have all your staff cleared. Okay. The next step, once we've picked our staff, is we need to make sure that we're coordinating with the other ministries. This is always important. And again, this is something we should always be doing. But there's some new challenges that come with the virtual world. For example, at my church, we usually have Pathfinders and adventurers meet at the same day and the same time, because families that have multiple, kids in multiple ministries can come to church for that one time and all of their kids go to their ministry. That's great in person. Well, unfortunately, that can cause issues if you're meeting virtually, because now there may be limitations, bandwidth, internet, the number of devices that a family has available to them. They may not be able to actually attend multiple online classes at the same time. So we have decided, Pathfinders and Adventurers at my church, we're splitting. Instead of meeting at the same time, we're alternating weekends. And that way, the families they don't have to choose between their kids and decide who gets to go to that meeting that day. It does add a little bit of overhead to the family of having things going on more weekends. But as long as we're virtual, for lack of a better idea, what else are they going to do, right? They should have time while we're at home. They have time to be part of these. But this is why it's really important this year to make sure you've coordinated with the other ministries. We may not always be able to completely deconflict, but do your best to work with your church to make sure that you're taking all the families into account. Some people won't have any problem with it. Some people might. And oh, by the way, those same people, they might be embarrassed to maybe express that they don't have good internet coverage or that they can't afford multiple devices. So be sensitive while you're trying to work these things out. Okay, the next step is to build a schedule. Just like you would any other year, you need to set your club goals for the year. Now, your goals are probably going to be a little bit different this year while we're meeting virtually. but still try to come up with some realistic goals. And then pick a meeting schedule that allows you to accomplish those goals. And most importantly, stick with that schedule as much as is possible. Part of the reason I think about this is there's so much uncertainty and chaos, right, going on in the world right now, that the more set you can be, the steady, as the next bullet says, steady, consistent meeting schedule provides a known factor for the families. It will hopefully be a little bit easier for them to plan, to know that this is going to happen. If you end up rescheduling meetings, canceling meetings, that just adds another uncertainty, more craziness into the world, and you're more likely to lose those families. If they don't know that there's a schedule they can count on, you may not get them back. So while we want to be consistent in our meeting schedule, it's also going to be really important to vary what you do in the meetings. There were some really good discussions yesterday about the idea that, kids are doing online school, they're on the computer all the time. We don't want Pathfinders to just be another day at school. And so we don't want it to be boring. There is work that we have to do, but let's find different ways to do it while we can keep the kids engaged and interested. Now, one way of doing that, I'm not saying you have to plan 5 different activities in one meeting. That's not what I'm talking about, because that can be really hard to accomplish things. What I am talking about are things like maybe one week focus on investiture book work. The next week, do an honor. The next week, do some other type of activity, so that every week it's not just the same thing. This is not the year to spend the first 6 months focused on investiture book work, and then the last 3 months doing fun activities. Let's mix it up. Let's give the kids variety so that they know, so that they're interested and want to stay engaged. Okay, another key point, well, communication is always important. And if you've heard me teach any lessons before, I talk about that a lot. But this year, it's going to be even more important that you communicate your plans in advance. If you're not going to see the kids in person, you can't hand out supplies that they need for that day. So the parents are going to need time to gather what they need. And so your staff needs time to prepare all of those types of things. So it's important to make your plans in advance and communicate them out. The other thing I would suggest, don't cancel activities. If you think they're too hard, maybe just look for a different way to do them. Okay? Maybe there are things that are always part of your Pathfinder year. Maybe you always have a Valentine's Day banquet fundraiser. Maybe you always do can collecting at Thanksgiving. You don't necessarily stop doing all of that, but see if you can find a different way to still keep that club identity this year, but find a new and different way to do it. Okay, I have interspersed throughout this some frequently asked questions that either I've gotten, Marilyn's gotten, different folks with some experience have seen. So we're going to hit on those. First one is, we're assuming at some point this year, we're going to switch from virtual to in-person meetings. Hopefully there will come a time when we can meet back in person as a full club. So how can you best plan for that? My recommendation is make those 2 schedules now. Beginning of the year, you can plan. For my club, I have, excuse me, I already have the calendar for meeting virtually, and I know what I'm going to do when we switch back to in-person meetings. And I've already coordinated that with the adventurers and the master guides. So the minute our church gives us the go-ahead to have youth group meetings in person, we can just switch to the new calendar. If you have to wait at that point to then decide what your new calendar is going to be, you're going to lose your kids. They're going to go off and find other things to do. But if you can just switch right over, then you've saved yourself a lot of stress, and it'll be much more seamless and things will go a lot better. Okay, another thing I want to caution you about though is we're going to have to be really sensitive to the idea that everyone may not be able to come back at the same time. Just because the church says it's okay, there may be families who either aren't comfortable coming back or may have health reasons, whatever reason that they are not comfortable coming back into a public setting right away. We want to make sure those people stay involved, that we're not embarrassing them, we're not calling them out, and we want them to stay part of the club. So start thinking now, how can you do maybe a hybrid version? Can you have the kids come, but still have a Zoom meeting set up for the speaker and the activities for those kids who are not yet able to come in person? Because remember, we want Pathfinders to be inclusive. We don't want to keep people out if we can help it. Okay, another question we've gotten a lot is, what if my Pathfinders did not finish their investiture work last year? COVID threw a lot of big wrench in everyone's lives. And what happens if we weren't able to have investiture, we didn't finish the books? Does this mean we have to go back and start all over? No. The recommendation we're giving is start your kids in whatever class matches their grade this year. Don't invest them for last year if they didn't finish the work. Start them in their current class, work that plan, and then throughout the year, help them to finish that previous year's work. Give them little bits at a time. Don't just throw out on day one, here's everything you also need to do from last year. That's very overwhelming, particularly on the first day. Think about when I started college, you get that syllabus at the beginning of the semester, and I would go home and cry every night because it was, for the first week of school, because it was so overwhelming that there was so much work to do. But once you realize that, we're not really asking you to do this all at once, it's a lot more manageable. So keep in mind, our kids are going to be dealing with that same thing. So tell them the plan up front, that they can, throughout the year, work on finishing their previous year's book, and give them small, achievable assignments throughout the year. So you're still doing your current year's work and finishing up from last year. And then also look for clever ways that you can combine the requirements for last year with this year. Every year has to do community service. So come up with projects, do this year's requirements, and then tack on last year's as part of that same community service. Okay, so let's be creative, but let's also we don't want to penalize our kids for things that were beyond their control last year, but they also have to finish the work. To get the pins, to get the bars, they have to do the work. And we want to teach them that responsibility, and we want to enable them. Here's another question we get. Should I charge club dues this year? This is, of course, up to you, but something to keep in mind. We know a lot of families are facing some real financial troubles this year. We want to take that into account, but my recommendation is you still charge some sort of a fee, some sort of a registration fee or club due, partly because paying for something makes people take it more seriously. They have truly committed to it. They're going to take it seriously, and they're going to take ownership of it. One thing we've talked about in my club is, just a few dollars, or maybe we charge them the regular registration fee and t-shirts are free. Think about some creative options there. But I would encourage you to have some sort of commitment from the family that they are indeed owners of the club along with you. Okay, so we've talked some of the big picture stuff, building your schedule, some things to take into account. Let's talk now about some specific ideas for events and activities. So these are we're going to talk a little bit about induction, marching and drilling, camping, basic water safety. I am not going to cover community service because there is an entire class on that later today. So let's talk about induction. These are just some ideas, okay? I'm not saying you have to do any of these, but maybe this will get you going on what you can potentially do. So one idea is to do a virtual induction. have a Zoom meeting with all of your kids in dress uniform and do the traditional induction service. I would recommend in this case, your Zoom meeting is your club, but then you can broadcast it onto Facebook or YouTube or something for family members to watch. But that still makes it a personal thing, right? But you can still see all of them on the video, but it's also accessible to the rest of the church. Another option is a drive-up induction. A lot of you probably have some experience with that with investiture this past year, where you could have everybody come to the parking lot in their cars. You could have the program maybe broadcast over Zoom so people can hear in their cars. And then each Pathfinder comes up, properly masked, of course, following all the right protocols, comes up to the front when their name is called. They light their candle, they get their scarf, and then they go back to their car. That can work really well. Also, it can be hard to hear. So there are some drawbacks to the drive-up concept, depending on what kind of technology your church has. Another option could be a hybrid. We saw some really great examples of investitures this past year where clubs would pre-record the in-person part, drive up, get out of your car, get invested, get back in their car and leave. They would record that. And then the next Sabbath, mix that video with other recorded parts of the service. And it's still personal, but it's some in-person events, some remote. So there's all kinds of options that you can do. This is just some ideas. Another thing I just want to say, right? There is nothing sacred about the induction script where we go and we light each of the candles. So it's okay if you can't do it the way you've always done it. As long as the elements are there this year, well, any year really, but as long as the elements are there, it's still an induction service. So think about some new creative ways that you can still make it meaningful to the kids, that they can understand what they are joining, but still taking into account some of the limitations that we have. All right, marching and drilling. This one sounds hard at first, but I don't really think it's going to be that difficult. You can teach individual moves virtually, right? All of us know about TikTok, right? We've watched our kids learn dances, learn moves, learn different things just from watching videos. Use that same concept in Pathfinders, okay? Show them how to do some moves, teach them, have them copy, right? You can also do it where they turn on their cameras and you position the camera so that you can see them and have them do it. Have them do right face, left face, about face, all of those types of things. So there's a lot of things you can do right away when you're fully virtual. Another option that you can do is bring small groups together. I believe the current direction is still groups of less than 10, but whatever the requirements are at the time, bring them together in person and practice marching. Say 1 week you bring the friend class together and you practice socially, the appropriate physical distance, but you can practice marching that way. Then maybe the next week you bring in companions and explorers or different things, so depending on the size of your club, right? But you can bring different smaller groups together. And then eventually when we're all back together, then you won't have to spend your time on the basics. You can actually do full club things together. So there are ways that you can do this even while virtual. So don't just write off, oh, there's no way that I can do marching and drilling. Camping. This is another one that brings up some interesting challenges. So your club camp out. There are some different ideas. You could do a virtual camp out, like the conference's iEmpower in the spring. You could set up activities for your kids and have them camp in their yards or camp somewhere with their families and work through all the requirements. That is an option. It is not my preferred option. But we'll see, because we still want to find a way for our kids to feel that they are part of a group, right? We want them to have a group identity, and develop that. And that's going to be hard to do virtually, but that may be what works best for you. Another idea, and this is the one we're considering right now for my club, is a club camp out, either with individual tents for everybody. Now, obviously, if you have a super big club, that may not work for you. But if you have, depending on your resources, you can maybe have, still have your groups, your club divided into smaller groups, have the friends camp together, the friend girls camp together, the friend boys camp together, but each Pathfinder's in their individual tent. And then you could set up cooking areas where there's either different timing or something, just to continue to allow some social distancing. All the other activities that you do while you're camping, you can do with social distancing. You can hike, you can work campfires, you can do all of those things, and you're outside. So you should still be able to do all of those things. Another idea, here again, depending on the size of your club and what kind of capabilities they have, maybe this is the year to try backpacking. Have the kids pack their own food, pack their own supplies, and you go backpacking. And this also allows you to do social distancing. So again, let's try some different ideas, but camping is possible. Okay. Another idea, just going back to the tents, depending on resources and things like that, you could consider having siblings of the same sex share a tent, families, you could look at some different options to help save resources. So it's whatever is going to work for you and your club. Basic water safety. This is another one that on the surface sounds impossible, but it's really not. What we're going to do in my club is we have a church member who has a pool and has volunteered that families can, or small groups can come and use their pool throughout the year to do basic water safety. And so depending how many kids we have, the size of the groups, all of that, one option could be maybe you set aside 2 days and you divide it into maybe 2 or 3 hour segments that families come to do their basic water safety. Or maybe you spread it out over the whole year, and this weekend this person is doing it, this next weekend another family. Again, it really depends on what resources you have. Another thing that I would point out, I know I've seen on Facebook this summer, some of my Pathfinders already have a swimming pool. So they have it at home. So maybe you can take advantage of that, have one person go visit as the instructor, still socially distance, and complete the activities at their own house or their own facilities. Okay, so there are ways that you can do this. It's just going to take more planning and probably more time. It's going to be really hard to just go one day and knock it out for the whole club. So it's something you're going to have to plan in advance. Okay, so that is the overview of some ideas of some different activities that you can do. Now I want to switch gears and talk club meetings. We heard some really great information on this yesterday, so I'm going to try not to repeat a lot of that, but some things to think about. What type of meetings are we talking about? I came up with 3 different versions. Okay, so there's virtual meetings, hybrid meetings, and then your traditional in-person meetings. I'm not going to talk about the in-person meetings because we all know how to do those. Virtual meetings, there's two different flavors of, at least at a high level. The first is where you're going to have a full club activity. Say you're going to teach an honor to everybody in your club. So everybody's on Zoom and you go for it. We were able to use this successfully in my club last year. I taught the Native American lore honor. We did crafts. We did all of that. If you want more information, I can give you some tips on using multiple cameras to show how you're doing the crafts. I had my own like virtual cooking show going on. So it was fun. I had fun at least. Another option that you can do when you're doing virtual meetings are breakout rooms. Now, I know some of you had questions about breakout rooms yesterday. Don't worry, Marilyn, who's coming up after me, is going to talk a little bit more about Zoom and how to utilize breakout rooms. Mostly in my club, we're going to use breakout rooms for doing investiture work, investiture class work. Or, maybe we have some activities where we need them in smaller groups. But again, we're also trying to build club cohesion and that, we're all in this together. So I don't want to split my kids up too much, particularly right at first. I want them all to realize we are part of this group. So that's how I am approaching my schedule. Do whatever, if that works for you or not. But do make sure if you go into breakout rooms that you always have a counselor in the room monitoring behavior and what's going on. Okay. Another option is a hybrid meeting. And what I mean by this is kind of what we were talking about with marching and drilling. Say you're going to have some of the Pathfinders meet for Zoom, but you're going to have maybe the Voyagers go do a community service project or go do some marching and drilling that day. So you're actually going to have, in a way, multiple meetings going on at the same time. That can work depending on what you're looking for. Communication is going to be really critical to make sure that people know what to expect, as is proper supervision at all of the activities. But again, think ahead. Telling somebody the night before, telling families the night before, oh, by the way, you need to show up at the church tomorrow, probably not going to win you a lot of friends, okay? And so communicating, keeping the schedule so people can plan for these activities is a good idea. Also, don't forget to coordinate this with your church and your church board. Make sure they are okay with you having people meeting at the church. Okay, my church has a clinical team that is overseeing all of the on-site activities during COVID. And so just make sure you've talked to them, make sure they are okay with the plan that you have and you're taking all the right precautions. Because keep in mind, when it comes to Pathfinders, it's probably not just the kids, it's the parent who's going to have to drop them off, supervision, that type of thing. So make sure that you are staying in touch with your church board and your pastoral staff. Supplies. Don't assume that your Pathfinders have access to everything that they need. Hopefully they do, but make sure that you have a plan in advance for that. If on the morning of your meeting, you say, okay, today we're going to do this craft, go get your scissors, your glue, your pipe cleaners, your straws, and balloons. Who knows if people have any of those things, right? So communicate that, give a list of supplies in advance so that families have a chance to pick that up as part of their normal, grocery shopping or whatever. Another option that we're looking into is you can plan a drive-by meeting where parents can come by and pick up a supply box. And that's also a good opportunity if they need to turn in medical forms or pay money or different things like that. You can do a drive-by, you give them supplies, they give you their signed forms, that type of thing. So one idea, beginning of the year, we're going to do a starter box for our club. And it's going to have the investiture book, rope so they can do knot tying, a candle for induction because we're planning to do a virtual induction, pen, paper, whatever craft supplies they might need for the first few meetings, club t-shirts for the new kids, uniform patches. We're going to try to put all of that together and hand it out. Now, I'm also not going to do this before the first meeting because I need to know who I actually have in the club this year, what supplies they need, So we're gonna set this up for a week or two after our first meeting, and then be able to hand out those supplies. Now, if you're collecting club dues, that's what that money is for. It can be used to go buy the supplies. So again, just an idea. And as long as you're meeting virtually, you can periodically have these drive-by meetings to go pass out supplies that your folks may need. Okay, the next step. You've got a plan. You know how to do it. How do we actually keep going with the meetings throughout the year? All right, one important thing is tracking our progress. So I encourage you, use the online tools that you have. We got a great overview of Google Classroom yesterday. Marilyn in the class coming up next is going to go over some other things for us. So use those tools. Play with them, figure them out. YouTube is your friend, right? Go Google how to do something. It's amazing what you can learn. We have the advantage of as Pathfinders that a lot of schools have already figured out a lot of these online tools for us. So we can go find information on how to use them. I would also encourage you to grade the investiture achievement books as you go. Don't wait until the end of the year to do the final review. Do it as you go so that you know how well your kids are progressing, and also that the Pathfinders know. So they get a sense of accomplishment of how much progress they're making. And then find ways to reward their progress. Encourage them to do the work. One idea, and that's all this is we're going to have the kids are going to earn points by both coming to the meetings and finishing their work. And we're going to have a Pathfinder store that they can buy things from using those points. And it's, it'll be some things that are relatively cheap points wise if they want kind of instant gratification, or there's going to be things that are a little more expensive that they can save up points for. And the things I'm talking about here, like stuff from Advent Source with the Pathfinder logo on it. Say, flashlight with the Pathfinder logo, pocket knife, those types of things that can apply back to Pathfinders. But find a way, again, just to try to keep your kids motivated, involved, so they feel that they are getting benefit from each and every meeting. Another way to keep your kids motivated and engaged, utilize guest speakers. This, I think, is one of the coolest things about the virtual world. Anybody can do anything, right? Since they don't have to physically be in the room with us, you can call your friends from another country. You can call them from across the world. I have a friend who is a Pathfinder director in the Washington, D.C. area, and I know she's very active. So I plan on giving her a call and asking her to teach at least one honor for us. So by bringing in different people, that also keeps things interesting for your Pathfinders. So they're not just listening to the same person over and over and over. Bring in variety. Similarly, you want to vary your meeting topics. I hit on this earlier, but I do think this is an important thing. When we're meeting in person, there's that tendency to focus on let's work, get the books done to make sure we're done, and then we'll fill in the other things. I would encourage this year, while we're virtual, mix it up more. Have that plan, but mix it up. Have different types of activities so that it keeps the Pathfinders and the staff from getting bored. Okay. Use a point system with rewards that make the kids want to participate. I believe that points should be a reward as opposed to like a penalty. So my approach is rather than taking points away from somebody, I give them points for doing good things, right? So if you're logged in on time, if you're participating in the activity, you're earning points by doing those things, okay? And then just like we saw yesterday in some of the classes, use those online interactive games and quizzes as a way to check that your Pathfinders are indeed paying attention. So make them fun, but with a purpose, right? We're trying to accomplish our goals and teach our Pathfinders. Okay, sorry, time check. All right. this is now my collection of other things to think about as you're running the club. Security. Make sure that the parents and the pastoral staff know they are welcome to attend and observe. Be careful how you talk about private or restricted meetings, right? They are private in that we're not letting outsiders in, but we want to make really sure that there is no chance of anyone thinking we are trying to restrict parental insight into what their kids are doing, okay? And I hope you kind of follow where I'm going with that. The same way that in-person meetings, we want to make sure that while we may not encourage parents to come, it is, parents or pastoral staff can come and observe if they wish to. Make sure that that option is still available when you're meeting virtually. However, do use all precautions to avoid Zoom bombing. All those the things like the waiting room, making people use their real names, checking with video that they are who they say they are, all those types of things. So use all those precautions. And the other thing, and I think Marilyn's going to hit on this just a little bit too, is as we're trying to do everything virtually and use all these online tools, be careful about what personal information you are storing in the cloud. It's one thing to put your own information out there. It's a different thing if you have a whole club's worth of information. So just make sure you've thought about that. Use all the internet security precautions to make sure you are still protecting people's personal information. Okay. Camera use. So it's great and very useful to see each other on camera. I know I've got the gallery view up right here, so it's helping me to see that people are actually looking at me and not sleeping. Appreciate that on a Sunday morning. But so I get it, right? We want to have that interaction. We also want to make sure that our kids are indeed there and didn't just log in and then go do something else. So that's great. However, keep in mind there are some drawbacks. One is video does take up bandwidth. And so some families without a strong internet signal may not be able to use video. So again, don't penalize those kids that have that problem. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another one is make sure that the kids and their families understand that you want them to use video. And some kids may not want people to see their house, their room, or different things like that. Or they may want people to see what they have in their house, and that provides us more of a distraction. So I would encourage you, if you're going to have cameras on, have the kids use virtual backgrounds. It can also be a fun way. You could have a background theme of the day, your favorite animal, different things. And it can be also a good way to get to know the kids, a little bit about themselves. You can have them share why they chose that, some different things. And again, I'm just going to keep harping on the communication thing. Communication with parents and staff is always one of the most important things that you can do. But it is even more critical now that we're doing virtually. We've all seen it, I'm sure, at work, at church. You can text or email people, you can share information, but it's not the same. It doesn't have the same impact as meeting them and talking to them face to face. And it makes communication harder if you can't pick up all the other cues that we use when we're talking to each other face to face. So as directors and staff, you're going to need to work extra hard to make sure that your plans and your intentions are clear. So in closing, here's some thoughts I want to leave you with. It is possible to do Pathfinders virtually. We're just going to have to accept the fact that it's going to be different, but you know what? Different is okay. It's time. Let's use this opportunity, embrace it to try different things. Okay. You as the director and your staff, you set the attitude for your club. And so keep that in mind, no matter how frustrated you are inside keep it inside, maybe find a mentor that you can talk to, share your frustrations, but it's important that you be the positive example to your staff, to your kids, and to their parents. Keep your focus on why we're doing this. And as long as our focus is in the right place, which is, after all, bringing our kids into a relationship with Jesus, right? Making them stronger Christians and members of the church and the community. As long as that's our focus and that's what we're doing, it's going to be okay. We'll figure this out. And finally, let's use this to be adventurous, right? Let's try new things. If you try it and it doesn't work, okay, no harm done. Move on, try something else. Okay, but we can do this. We've got a great network here in Texas of lots of people with great experience who can help us out. But most importantly, we have our Heavenly Father who's going to help us make the right decisions, give us ideas, and keep us tied in with what's going on. Okay, we are at 9:46. Like I said, we're going to take a couple extra minutes to answer questions maybe that we need to talk about. And then you will get a break and we'll start the next class just a few minutes late. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And let's see. Marilyn, if you can help me with what questions do we still need to talk about? One question today.
Yes. Okay. We're going to get an echo.
Okay. Tell you what, Marilyn, you want to just come over here?
Yeah.
We're socially distanced, I promise.
Hello. She's over there and I'm over here. We're moving at different parts of the room. Most of the questions I think I've answered or someone else has answered, but the question we get most often is, what is okay with risk management or the board? What kind of approvals you need if you're going to do some in-person things? And so,
okay. Do you want to just go ahead and address that?
I can.
Since you're there.
When you're doing anything with your club, they've left it up to your church board because every part of the country is different. What you can do in San Diego, you may not be able to do in Dallas, or what you can do in Houston, you may not be able to do in Fort Worth. Every area has a different level of risk. So risk management has left it to your church to decide where they want to, what they want to allow. So it's very important that you get church approval for any activity you want to do in person, whether it's to a park, whether it's to a community service event, like you're going to help, pick up trash in a park outside as your community service activity. Well, they need to approve that. It's more important than ever that you get it on the church agenda and they approve the activity, whether it's meeting at the church or meeting somewhere else, meeting in someone's home. Like the suggestion that Nadine had about going to someone's home to do the pool activity, that has to go through your board, okay? They will need to write, okay, who's teaching it? Do you have lifeguard? What kind of pool? They'll need information. It needs to be in their minutes. So risk management is more about making sure you have approvals and it's documented, but every single church is different. I hope that covers
that. Okay, I'm back. Thank you, Marilyn. Appreciate that. Let's see. I'm just trying to skim through a little bit to see if there was anything. So one thing I just happened to see here is where is the best place to find a virtual backdrop, or if you're talking about the actual picture, you can use any picture off the internet. This one that I'm using, the iEmpower, that's I think it started as maybe a PowerPoint slide that they turned into a JPEG, but any picture you want, really, you can set. Oh, yeah. Good point. Do make sure that any picture you're using is not copyrighted. Okay. We don't want to steal other people's work. And particularly if things are being recorded or broadcast, we need to make sure that anything we're using is public domain, or that you have express written permission to use it. Okay. So yeah, you either have kids, pets are always a really good one, right? Have people take pets, take pictures of their pets and show them. You can get creative with it. Zoom also has some virtual backgrounds built into it, but you can get a little crazier if you want. Okay. Okay. Let's see. So I think that we're going to wrap this up. Yep. Looking at the clock. We'll go back through the questions. Make sure after this, make sure that we've addressed in some way your questions that you have. I'd like to thank you so much for your time. And let's see, we'll take a 15-minute break, Marilyn, and then. Oh, okay. You still want to start? I want to start. Okay. All right. Sorry. So we need you to be efficient. 9-minute break. Marilyn's going to start at 10 because she's got a lot of stuff to cover. She's going to pick up a couple things about Zoom. And so she's got all kinds of good information for you. So thank you so much. Appreciate you guys. Good luck this year. And the presentation will be available, and it has my email address on it. Feel free to reach out. I'll share at least what information I have, what ideas we have. And I look forward to hearing about the successful year that all of us are going to have. Thanks very much, and see you next time.